I do like the Brewers' chances in October. I say it with a little hesitation, but there's a couple of guys on this team I've got to step it up. We'll get to that coming up next here on Locked On Brewers.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good to have you along here on a Friday. Brewers had the day off on Thursday, welcoming the Colorado Rockies for a 3-game set. And without question, the Brewers have to take at least 2 or 3. And I like where the Brewers are right now. Wish they were a little closer to the Dodgers and Phillies, but they can still catch those two teams, but they got some work to do. And a few guys on this team have got to step it up. Chuck Freeman, Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Longtime sportscaster here in the state of Wisconsin and proud host of Locked On Brewers. Brewers, my favorite team, and I assume they're one of your favorite teams wherever you may be living as well, tuning us in here on Locked On Brewers. This show is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB. Use all lowercase Locked On MLB and win $50 instantly when you play $5 on PrizePicks. All right, there's 2 guys who I think got to step it up, really, for this team to have a deep run in October. And I don't mean to single out these guys, but I'm going to have to. Sal Frelick, I know there's a lot of Sal Frelick love up there, and I'm not so sure some of that's worn off a little bit. And I know this is only Sal's second year and all that. We're going to cut him some slack. But I'll be honest, 263 and two home runs for some of you guys who didn't want to trade him at all. Not that I wanted to trade him at the All-Star break last year, but you thought he was so untouchable. I don't know. Solid defensively. I like some of the things he does. I hope there's more there to Sal Frelick. But whether there is or not, Sal Frelick, the 2 home runs, I know he's not a power hitter, but the guy's going to hit me 2 home runs. I need it better than 263 in the batting average. All right. I want more from Sal Frelick coming up here in the next couple of weeks. Rhys Hoskins. Yeah, he's got the 23, 24 home runs, but dude, that 209 batting average is painful. Can't be that low. Some of his at-bats, the strikeout the other night to end the game. I actually thought Rhys was going to come through there, and he didn't in Wednesday's game. Didn't come through, but he's down to 209, and I think Rhys is too good of a hitter to that. I don't know if that knee has bothered him, the hamstring or what, but Hoskins, I want to say, is better than 209, but he's got to step it up. And I think he's going to have some big hits. He's going to have some big hits down the stretch and going in October as well. I predicted at the beginning of the season when they signed him, I thought 35 home runs. He's not going to get close to that. He missed some time because of injury, but still got a shot at upper 20s. But the 209 batting average, and I know some of you don't like the batting average thing, but I still, a little old school in me, I still like to look at it. And he's not been very clutch, I don't think. I want more out of Hoskins. I want Hoskins on this team long term. I want him on this team. I was hoping that he'd have a big year, and then the Brewers would maybe sign him to an extension. As a result, he's due $18 million next year on a mutual agreement. We'll see what the Brewers do, and we'll see what Hoskins does. And we'll talk to Hunter Baumgardt a little bit later on in the show from the Baseball Postgame Show on 97.3 The Game. See what he thinks about Hoskins as well. The Rockies are coming in next, and the Rockies are not a very good team. They beat the Braves on Thursday night 3-1. They're 52 and 89. Saw a little piece on the Rockies that if they win their final 23 games, they have a shot at the wild card. So it was paragraphs and talking about how the Rockies are still in this. I don't know if that was in the Onion or wherever that was, but they ain't finished in the season on 20. They might go 500, but we can't have them come in here and take 2 or 3 from the Milwaukee Brewers. Absolutely not. Again, there's going to be one of those games where, the Brewers might not be their day. That's just the way it is. Hey, the Dodgers lost to the Angels on Wednesday night. Thursday night, and there's no shame losing to the Tigers, obviously. The Padres are up 3-0 in the top of the ninth inning with 2 outs. And the Tigers hit a grand slam to eventually win the game. But I still think that you got to take 2 or 3 from the Rockies coming up. 2 or 3 from the Rockies, and then move on. And you got a huge series with the Phillies a week from Monday at home. Huge 3-game set. But you got to stay with that 3-game range of the Phillies. You can't afford to fall any further. And the Brewers are keeping pace with these guys. When I say keeping pace, they're staying within that range of the Phillies and Dodgers. Hopefully those 2 teams will fall off. The Phillies keep winning. They won again on Thursday. Won again on Wednesday. I was watching their game with Toronto. But we'll get more into the top 2 seed, the rotation, the pitching for the Brewers. Hunter Baumgardt will join us coming up here in a little bit. We'll continue on. Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. PrizePicks. I was talking about PrizePicks to start the show here today. Man, if PrizePicks, let's say you went over on Lamar Jackson to score to rush for over 50 yards. I had him over 50 yards. He got to be there with the Ravens on Thursday night, but maybe there's some other college, whatever. It's all there on PrizePicks. PrizePicks. All you got to do is pick between 2 to 6 players on PrizePicks, and you're in the money if you win. Right now on PrizePicks, here's what you have to do. They're the number 1 daily fantasy sports app on the internet. Over 5 million active members. But download the PrizePicks app, use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB, and you'll get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's promo code LOCKEDONMLB, PrizePicks, $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. This show's also brought to you by Ibotta. Talking about that this week. Ibotta, you can get cash back for your purchases. You're taking a dream vacation maybe this summer. Whatever you do with Ibotta, the average Ibotta user earns $256 a year. That's the average. You can save over thousands of brands, retailers, Lowe's, Macy's, Best Buy, all that. Right now, Ibotta is offering listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta. Using the promo code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. Go to the App Store, Google Store, and download the free Ibotta app. Start earning cash back. Use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's Ibotta, IBOTTA, Google Play App Store, and use that promo code LOCKEDONMLB. Whether you're buying stuff for the grill this weekend, beauty supplies, toys, you can beat inflation no matter what you're purchasing when you use Ibotta. Sunscreen, whatever. Wherever you go to the store. Again, there's 2,400 brands and shops you can go to. Retailers. Shop Ibotta now, offering listeners $5 for just trying Ibotta using the promo code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. That 3-hole in the Brewer lineup is just killing me. It is. We'll talk to Hunter a little bit about that coming up here in a little bit. Jake Bowers was in a 3-hole on Wednesday. Yeah, God bless Gary Sanchez. We love us some Gary Sanchez, not a 3 or 4 place hitter in the lineup. Contreras has got to bat there every day. I don't know why they're juggling around that 3rd spot in the order. Put Terang. I know Terang. Terang's another guy that's got to step a little bit. Leadoff hitter, got to be hitting better than 252. And I know, young player. I know I got to qualify it with these guys, some of these guys, but need a little bit more of Terang. A little bit more of Terang. A little weak ground out to the pitcher the other night in extra innings. Going to need some clutch hits for Terang. Hit them where there ain't. That's what I like about Terang. Not doing enough of that. But I still want Terang, Churio, and Contreras, 1, 2, 3 in the order. How about Churio? Just keeps chugging along. Where did I see this today? MLB Network. I saw something that was really stupid on, and just kind of, Fox Network. Mark Sweeney lists his top 5 players under the age of 25. Bobby Witt, all right. Paul Skeens, Gunnar Henderson, Jackson Merrill, Corbin Carroll. I like Jackson Merrill. I do think Churio's better. I didn't see Merrill strike out or pop out to finish off the game tonight for the Padres. And I'm not going to hold that against him. But I'm telling you, big moments, Churio. I like Churio better than Gunnar Henderson. But I mean, they named this 5 and no Churio. Witt, Skeens, Henderson, Merrill, and Carroll. Yeah, I get Witt and Skeens and Carroll. But Merrill and Henderson, I'll take Churio over both of those guys. But you know what? My tweet I put out, I mean, why did the Brewers even exist? I mean, why do they even exist? I saw this on the MLB network the other day. Harold Reynolds was struggling to say something nice about the Brewers. Had a couple of facts wrong. They're just struggling. It's like, well, we got 3 minutes to fill. Let's try to say something about the Milwaukee Brewers. We should, because they have the 3rd best record of baseball. And they got some things right. They stated a couple of Captain Obvious things there. But it was like, I felt like they just were, someone forced their hand. Hey, you better talk about the Brewers because they got the 3rd best record of baseball. Oh yeah, let's cover a couple highlights. Hey, research team, I haven't seen a Brewer game all year long, but find me some numbers and things of the Milwaukee Brewers. All right, Hunter Baumgartner joins us next here on Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. You get us on Google, Spotify, Apple, on all the major downloads. Wherever you download your podcast, we are there. Please go to our growing YouTube page. Search Locked On Brewers, and we are there. Subscribe. Please hit the subscribe button. We're there for you 24/7. All the content is free, but go to YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the like. It'll get you to an episode all the time. Free content, 24 hours a day, 5 days a week during the baseball season. Postseason, obviously, we're going to be expanding that a little bit. Had a chance a couple of minutes before this show, talk to Hunter Baumgardt. Hunter Baumgardt, our guest, and he is from 97.3 The Game, producer, reporter. You hear him all the time. He is a key contributor to the Baseball Postgame Show on 97.3 The Game, joining Pipe Bomb and the host Tim Allen. And Hunter is out at the ballpark, getting the stories, tracking things down, all those great videos that they put on their Twitter site. It's because of HB. Hunter, it's a great time to get you on here as we're heading down to the final couple weeks of the season. Thanks for coming on.
It's wild. As we sit here today, 22 games remain in this season, which is wild. When you start out at 162 and then you get to this final stretch, it's kind of surreal, but it's why we cover this team for the entire season. It's for this stretch run in October, and this team's primed for a great run. So always happy to join you, Chuck.
Well, I certainly hope so. Because I can't take another October fail, Hunter. I've been through too many of those already.
Yeah, that's been the theme of the last, ever since 18. They haven't won a playoff series since 18. And I think this year's team is built a little differently than the ones that have failed in the past. And so I feel like that can be a reason why they can make a run this year. But as we've seen, baseball's so random that they could make a deep run or they could be eliminated so fast. It's so hard to tell.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, who would have guessed Arizona would have made their run last year and the Brewers would be out in 27 hours? Yeah, I mean, they do so many things right, the Milwaukee Brewers.
Yeah.
They have a high baseball IQ. You just hope, because when they go through a little bit of a slide, like they have the last couple of days, and Thursday's the off day, you just hope that doesn't happen in the postseason.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, exactly. That's the hope. And look, I think the law, it's interesting because since August 5th, they've lost 2 series, both to St. Louis. And it's weird because they dominated St. Louis earlier in the season. So this was a team they took care of. And then it kind of switched here, and the Cardinals won 4 and the Brewers got 2 of their last 6 here. But the good news is all of that, and the Cardinals were still 10 games back. So the Brewers did enough damage early in the season against them. And overall, the Brewers have shown to be a better team than the Cardinals this season. I truly think that what's going on offensively is still they're trying to find that 3-hole hitter to replace Yelich. And you're not going to replace the production that Yelich had. Maybe you can replace him with some pop because he didn't have the home run numbers that he had in years past, but he was hitting for average so well, and he was coming up in big spots and making big plays. So that 3 spot, I think, is where they're struggling right now. Now they, Jackson Churrio's picked up some slack. Willie Adames has picked up some slack. William Contreras has come back out of his June, July-ish slump that he went on, which wasn't a big slump, but it was a slump for him. And now he's come out of it. I think all of those guys have, but if you can find that 3-hitter, whether it's a more consistent Rhys Hoskins, a Garrett Mitchell, who's starting to come around a little more, whoever it happens to be, you could put Contreras there, but if you can have a 3 guy that's not Contreras or Adames, and you can put Churrio in the 2, that extends that lineup and I think solves a lot of your offensive problems.
With all due respect for Gary Sanchez, on a pennant contending top 3 team in baseball, Gary Sanchez ain't that 3 or 4 hitter that I'm looking for.
Yeah, that's an interesting one because I do loop him in the mix as someone who I could see, but I feel like he would need to get more playing time overall. Like I feel like he just hasn't been able to get in a rhythm this year. And I get it. Contreras is a guy that's going to catch most days. So where are you going to put him? You're going to put him at DH, maybe first base, but probably not first base. You have 2 first basemen already, and we can talk about the production of those 2 guys. But overall, I agree. I think you have to have a guy that's going to get regular playing time. So then your eyes look to a Garrett Mitchell. Your eyes look to a Rhys Hoskins, who's going to get more playing time at first probably than Bowers, or more time in that lineup. Certainly deserves it at this point, although his average isn't where you'd want it to be, obviously below 210 or so. So it's again, but that's why they've struggled to find that guy, because Yelich was that perfect slot in there, just that perfect guy to have in that 3 spot that extends your lineup. I still don't feel when they line up 1 to 9, and I think this is why they've won so much without Yelich, is because 1 to 9 they're so stacked that they can make up for that 3-hole hitter with a back end Terang or a back end Ortiz or a back end, Hoskins with a clutch home run, something like that in the back end. I think that's why they've been able to make up for it. But I think that one more, I think, would just put a stamp on that offense.
The Hoskins thing is interesting because I loved him when they signed him. I thought, great. Now, I don't know. Do you think he's going to opt out of that deal and test the free agent market? I got a funny feeling he's going to take that $18 million next year.
I kind of do too, but then again, was someone going to give him another two for 34 and bet that he's going to be better in his second year off injury? Yeah. That's possible because he has the reputation that he has. And I don't know if it's Philly or somewhere else, but I think that someone would maybe take a chance on that. But then again, maybe he talks to his agent and it's, hey, look, I think this is going to be the best, and they think it's going to be the best scenario to opt in, because that would be a pretty payday for him. And if he's not going to get that on the open market, I wouldn't mind having Hoskins again next year, because I think he can be a better player next year. I really do. Heck, we've seen Jesse Winker have a better season this year outside of, in what he's doing, because I think they just caught Jesse Winker on a bad year. He's actually hitting some clutch home runs now for the New York Mets. Not that we need Jesse Winker back, because I know Brewers fans and Jesse Winker, those two don't mix very well. However, I do think we got him on an off year, and I kind of feel the same way with Rhys. And Rhys, an off year, the guy's got 23 home runs with 3 weeks to go.
That's interesting you say that about Winker, because I was flipping around the channels on the MLB package last night, and I turned on right when Winker hit the grand slam of the first inning.
Right.
And he's a couple of big moments for the Mets, and he's fitting in and he's loving life there. I wouldn't have been totally opposed if they went out and reacquired him when Washington, I think it was, that had. I would not have been opposed. I know Brewers would have never have done that because of the way it ended last year. Brewer fans would have hated it, but he looks much better, man.
Oh, he does. And he said it when he talked to, I believe it was Todd Rosiak did a nice story on him when he was here with Washington. And he was just, Winker was just like, I was just not my best self. And I thought I could play better than what I really could, health wise. And it just was not a good year for him. And it wasn't a good year to have him, in the organization. But I think, maybe this year, who knows, years to come, maybe it would be. And I feel like maybe that's what, and not that Rhys has, it's not the same, because Rhys has been more productive. Rhys has been great in the clubhouse. Rhys, I think, has been a huge, I think he's really enjoyed it here from all things considered. The Bob Nightingale article recently where he said it's been amazing here in Milwaukee. So maybe that factors in too, where he does opt in. I hope he does. I want to see another year of Rhys Hoskins in Milwaukee.
We're talking with Hunter Baumgardt, 97.3 the game in Milwaukee. the Baseball Postgame Show that he's on with Tim Allen and Pipe Bomb, Jeff Orlowski. Just a great show. Let's talk about the postseason. I want them to get a top 2 seed. They might, on paper, they might not be better than the Phillies and Dodgers, and they're falling behind those guys a little further in the last week here because those teams have picked it up again. But do you think it's important to get a 1 or 2 seed?
I think it's super important. Matt Arnold said it was much in late July before the trade deadline when we talked to him, and he said we don't want to, obviously winning the division is the first goal, but we want to get a top 2 seed. And it's interesting because we talked to on the show on 97.3 The Game tonight. Talked to John Kincaid, who's from 97.5 The Fanatic morning guy there in Philly, and he said the Phillies in spring training said our goal this year is to get a top 2 seed. And so it's interesting that they've had it eyed up ever since then. I'm sure, every team wants to say that. Every team wants to live that. Obviously you want to be the best team you can be. But it is interesting that is really now, as we're starting to get deeper into this new playoff format, start to learn how it all works, that those top 2 seeds, that's big. However, you also look at what the Rangers and Diamondbacks did last year, and both teams came out of that first round. Both teams were wild card teams, and both teams just happened to get hot in the playoffs. So it's like, while I do want a top 2 seed because it eliminates one of your series, it's one less series you have to get to the World Series. So I do think the Brewers absolutely should go for it. I think once they wrap up this division, they should keep that foot on the gas and try to get those top 2 seeds. I do think it's going to be tough, though. The Phillies are hot. The Dodgers are hot right now. So we'll see if they eventually kind of regress a little bit. But, boy, they're hot right now.
Hunter, I think the top 3 seeds should get rewarded. Because if you win a division title, you should get rewarded somehow. You shouldn't have to play in that wild card game. Just hearing her talking, I was like, gosh, the Brewers should get rewarded. They got the top 3 teams in the baseball, all of the National League, and the Brewers are probably going to have to play a wild card round. And I think that's wrong because they're going to be division champs.
Yeah, as we said today, the Brewers would have the best coming into Thursday's action. Brewers would have the best record in the AL if they were in the AL. You think about that, and I know there's a lot of teams bunched up there, but they were, a half game above the Orioles. They would be the best record in that American League. And so when you have that type of season and the season that record's going to be at the end of September and you don't get a bye, yeah, that is tough. Football is the same way, right? You win your division, you don't necessarily get rewarded, and maybe you should. And obviously they now just the 1 seed get the bye in the NFL. They changed so much. All these sports change their playoff format so much. I'm trying to remember what they are. But I think because of what happened last year and the loss of the sweep loss to Arizona, I think the organization probably and a lot of fans are definitely thinking, okay, we don't want any part of that round again because we saw what can happen at home in Milwaukee.
I don't want any. Those are 2 miserable days at Anfield Field. Yeah. And it was like, God, we just played 162 games and it's gone in 27 hours. That's not disappointing. I don't want that ever again. I want to get to a 5-game series at least.
Yes.
And then roll your dice against the Dodgers or somebody. What if this team is not going to make it deeper? What concerns you most about these guys? What are you, and I talked about if this offense goes through one of their offensive freezes, but what is it with you?
It's offense, because I think this pitching, this might be, I know they don't have the top guys, the top of the line guys in Burns and Woodruff this year, but they've got such a deep bullpen and such a deep pitching staff. You can go bullpen, you can go starters. Guys can, as we saw Colin Ray, piggyback with DL Hall on Wednesday night. Like, I feel like this is one of the deeper stabs they've had, and it reminds me of 2018 when you had all those young guys who were they hadn't settled into their roles yet, but they could be deployed at any time, and that's what kind of it feels like with a DL Hall and a Payamps can pitch at any time, and Brian Hudson and McGill and Koenig, and again, it's like 2018 where you get to the 5th, 6th inning and you say, boom, line up Hudson, Koenig, McGill, Williams, Payamps in any order, and you're going to be really in good shape. And not every guy's going to have their on night. But I think that's the strong suit. So what if there were to be a concern, it would be that offense, the search for the three hitter, and the inconsistency that sometimes these guys have had, and the young guys specifically as well. And Murphy has talked about it all season long, and he talked about it after this Cardinals series, how he flat out said that the young guys sometimes in these situations tend to try to do too much. And I think learning throughout the season is going to help. But then again, a lot of these guys don't have a lot of, if any, postseason experience. So how much does that play into it? Is that we saw the kind of the star-struck nature of those first couple of games of the Dodgers series. Is that something we see in the first couple of games of October? Because if it is, there's no room for that in October, because you're going to get eliminated pretty quick.
Yeah, Hunter, people have been talking about, let's get pitching at the trading deadline. Let's get pitching. And they got themselves some pitchers. But I was like, let's get somebody to replace Christian Yelich in the heart of that order. Let's do something offensively, because that's where they're going to – I think, man, their pitching has been really, really good. You got a bunch of kind of no names in that starting rotation. But you throw in Ashby, too. Yeah. And you mentioned D.L. Hall. Wasn't D.L. Hall – he's been great since coming off the injured list.
Oh, he's been fantastic. 11 consecutive scoreless innings now. That relief, coming after Colin Ray and holding them in that game for as long as he did. You have just Colin Ray and DL Hall to go 8 innings there. That was fantastic. Ray didn't have his best night. He was also not that bad. He just had bad first inning. Was able to give you 4 and just 2 runs. And then DL Hall just him and Ashby just absolutely have come up from AAA. They finally seem healthy. I think that's a huge part of this, because now your bullpen is super healthy. Like this is probably as healthy as your bullpen has been. And a little bit of the problem is you have almost too many guys now. There's going to be an odd man out or two. There's going to be 1 to 2 guys that are going to leave this bullpen before the playoffs and before the end of September that we're like, oh man, I wish you could have kept them. But there has to be, because you just sent a guy who has a 1.73 ERA down to the minors.
Yeah, with Hudson. Yeah. That's funny, because I've been talking about that on my podcast. Who is going to be left off? There's going to be a reliever that's not, it could be Milner. Who do you think it's going to be? Piguero? Who's going to be left off that postseason roster? Because Ashby, the way he's throwing, and DL Hall, you got to consider them too.
Well, you have your whole bullpen right now, and then you have Bryce Wilson on the IL and Brian Hudson. So that's 2 guys of the bullpen right now that can't even be on the roster when, say, Bryce Wilson's healthy. Do you bring him back or not? Like, I feel like you should, but who leaves then? Do you send Piguero back down? Do you get rid? Like, is Milner gone? Like, and then Brian Hudson has to come back at some point. What? Anoli Paredes is another guy who's still hurt, who we haven't seen, and maybe he's the odd man out. But there's going to be more than one, because they don't have enough roster spots even in September. So I don't think you can go entire September without Brian Hudson. I think you can get some rest for him. I think give him to mid-September there, maybe September 15th or so. Maybe that homestand when they play when you play Philly on that Monday night, September 16th. I feel like that's when Brian Hudson comes back. So at that point, who's the odd man out? Is it Joe Ross? But Joe Ross has been great in that role of cleanup for a couple of innings at a game. You love all these guys in these different roles, but there's going to have to be a tough decision coming up in probably 10 days.
Hunter, great work on 97.3 The Game, covering the Brewers, as always. Thanks for taking some time. Of course, we'll see you at the ballpark, and we'll get you on the podcast once the off-season things slow up a little bit, man. Absolutely. Anytime, Chuck. Great. Always enjoy listening to you as well, so thanks for having me. That's Hunter Baumgardt, 97.3 The Game, Brewers reporter, producer there as well. This is Chuck Freeman. This has been Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. For your second listen, go to Locked On MLB. Our guy Sully will take you around the league and chat about that. We'll see you coming up on Sunday night with the next edition of Locked On Brewers.